Hey VC, it's Eric. So there's this theme going around about 5 bands that people like and talk about that I don't really care for. And it seems like a couple of these videos have been out there, and I figured that I'll do my twist on that, which is I'm a loose here. And rather than talking about these bands that I don't really care for, and let me be clear, a few of them have some songs that I enjoy, but overall I have no interest in owning their records. I have no interest in listening to their music in depth. And if they're your favorite band or a band you love, great. More power to you. As long as you're not forcing me to listen to it, if it keeps you off the streets, I'm okay with it. So rather than me go on and on about these bands, I'm going to do something a little different. And we're going to start with this one. So there's more than a few people here that like the band The Necromantics. Great. Or the Horror Pops. Basically the same band in my opinion. But you know what? I would rather listen to the Meteors any day of the week. And the Meteors were the original UK band to mix punk and rockabilly. Yes, I know the Cramps were doing some of that in the States, but if we want to split hairs, the Cramps were doing more 50s rock and roll and blues and all kinds of other stuff. So I love the Cramps. There's a bunch of their discs back there. But when it comes to psychobilly, you can't beat the early days of the Meteors. Their follow-up bands, the Moving Escalators, the Tall Boys are bands I love. But the Meteors, In Heaven, killer record. If you want to know what psychobilly came from, highly recommend this record. Check it out. So, rather than talk about the fact that I'm really not a Kiss fan, let's talk about Turbo Ugande from Norway, Oslo. I will be talking about these guys more when I do my video on bands from Norway. These guys are part of the high energy rock and roll scene. Think Alice Cooper, think the Misfits, think Black Sabbath, all of that into a very weird stew. Now, warning, if you are at all homophobic or have any issues with homosexuals, they talk a lot about being gay. They are not gay, but they talk about it a lot. It was a shock tactic at the time. And at any rate, this is probably the greatest glam album of the 1990s, in my opinion. And this one is called Apocalypse Dudes. The one before this is called Ass Cobra. And that's a great record too. But you can't do much better than Turbo Negro's Apocalypse Dudes. They sing about pizza on this, for God's sake. Alright, Nirvana. Never was a Nirvana fan. Never did much for me. I don't know why. I was more of a Pearl Jam, Soundgarden guy. But rather than talk about those bands, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the Deep Six compilation. And I have that tray on upside down. I'll have to shift this after I do the video. See that band there at the top, Green River? Those were the guys that basically invented grunge. That was the first quote-unquote grunge band. Members of Mudhoney and the guys that would go on to form Mother Love Bone and Pearl Jam. Then you've got the Melvins. You've got Malfunction, which was the Andrew Wood and his brothers. He would go on to do Mother Love Bone. Skinyard, Soundgarden, the U-Men. This is where the Seattle scene came from. Anybody who wants to tell you that Pearl Jam are a bunch of carpetbaggers needs to get their facts straight. The guys from Pearl Jam were in bands long before Nirvana showed up on the scene. All right, Pink Floyd. Any day of the week, and I know there's a lot of love for this band in the VC. Hawkwind. Any day of the week, I'd rather listen to Hawkwind. This is Space Ritual, which is their live album. I should probably cover that up. I don't want to get an explicit tag. There we go. Killer psychedelic hard rock, space rock, featuring Lemmy Kilmister. Great stuff. Now, once you get into the late 70s and into the 80s, the quality kind of falls apart as the band fell apart. But about those first 5 or 6 records, killer stuff. And number 1, rather than talk about my dislike of the Beatles, let's talk about Joe Meek. Joe Meek was a superstar producer, maybe not so superstar, best known for producing the song Telstar by the Tornadoes. Joe Meek was a great British pop rock producer. These are 2 compilations of his work featuring different bands. Killer stuff. All of that studio wizardry that gets put on guys like George Martin. Joe Meek was doing all of that stuff first. Playing with tape delay, playing with electronics, playing with all kinds of different technological stuff. Joe Meek, well worth checking out. All right. I'm going to give the disclaimer that Andy gave, which is, this isn't personal. If I insulted your favorite band, I'm sorry. They just don't connect with me. And at the end of the day, that's just my opinion, man. or your opinion, man. I'm glad to get this one out of the way, and I'll catch you all later.